Today I'm going to be taking a look at the Toyworld 01 Hegemon figure, aka G1 Megatron. I bought this as a pre-order from chmungmung.com back in January or February. It was really taking a bit of a gamble because this is the first product released from Toyworld Japan and no one really knew back then if it was going to pan out. Here you can see it in gun mode with the accessories. We've got the silencer at the front, just like the original G1 toy, the scope, and going off the screen here, which I'll give you a look at, is a stock. The stock seems to fit a little bit weirdly. I don't really like that on, but anyway, it's easy enough to just pull off. Get rid of that. Now, where the masterpiece Takara Megatron fell apart was in that it was absolutely huge, too big for my hand. But if you look at this Hegemon figure, it's perfectly sized. In fact, it's just a little bit larger than the original G1 Megatron, and from what I can gather, it's very similar in size to a real Walther P38. This doesn't have the exact look of a Walther P38 that the original Megatron had. It's a bit stylized. I mean, you can see this stylizing in the thickness of the handle. A lot of that thickness exists for the transformation, but all things considered, it's a really nice looking gun. And albeit that the sight might be mounted a bit too far back for the real thing, but still good looking. To get this silencer off, what we need to do is first pull the end off like that, then split this barrel. It goes on in a sort of horizontal way, and if you look in here you'll see this little notch, the hole, has to be on the top. That's what the sight, the manual little sight there goes into. It fits into that notch. You can see it poking through there. Anyway, let's get rid of this and do a size comparison of Masterpiece. Here's a size comparison between Masterpiece Megatron and Hegemon. And as you can see, Masterpiece Megatron is grossly oversized. If I put it in my hand, it makes me look like I'm some kind of midget, and I've got a really big hand, so it's obviously way out of scale. Whereas Hegemon is just about right for a adult human hand. A little peeve that I've got is the paint on Hegemon. If you have a look at this, Hegemon is really not shiny, whereas Masterpiece Megatron is almost chrome. It's like a really nice silver paint. A lot of the original pictures that I saw of Hegemon when it was being solicited for pre-orders, it came across to me as being chromed like Megatron. Now I realise now that that was mainly due to good lighting conditions that they had at the time, but it's a bit of a disappointment to me that it turns out to be this only slightly shiny grey plastic. And even that, I mean, let me put this down, even the plastic that they've used, it has a lot of swirls and maybe stress marks, maybe they're just swirls from moulding, but it doesn't look good. For the price, I would have expected the plastic to be a bit higher quality. If you look at my review for the Ninja Assassin from iGear, that had a really beautiful plastic in it, not one imperfection, whereas this looks like arse, to be honest. And it's forgivable given that the toy in general is really awesome, but those swirls I don't like. Also, here we've got the safety. Just like MP Megatron, it does have a safety. When this ships, it comes with this orange safety plug, probably to comply with US toy gun laws, or maybe just as kind of insurance to make sure it does get in the country when they sell it to US customers. I don't think we've got any laws about safety plugs on guns in Australia, I'm not sure. But anyway, it came with it, even though it's packaged in robot mode. The transformation. So we want to start by opening up these panels at the back. I've actually loosened these a bit before I started because I have no fingernails and it's hard to do. So we fold the flaps over on themselves to concertina them down into a smaller size. They both work kind of the same, but not identically. These parts during this transformation are probably going to pop off a lot. That's not typical of how the figure is when you actually have it, but to show it on camera is a little bit tricky. So anyway, you want to pull these legs down. Might separate them first. It can be quite hard to pull sometimes. It's very stiff. Yep, then we get this trigger guard. Fold the trigger guard just off to the side a bit. What we want to do is expose this channel here. There's a beam, and the lower portion of the body is going to move through that channel over to the other side, like that. Okay. Fold this set of panels out of the way and then rotate it backwards. That's important. If you don't do that rotating backwards now, you won't be able to do it later. Adjust these so they're pointing downwards. So, see what I mean? It came off. Not typical. Putting downwards is the best way to get them out of the way for now, and you can pose them later on. Fold this little nub section backwards, out of the way. Then fold the other nub that holds the trigger guard out of the way. Leave it like that for the moment because the top is going to rotate around like this. Now that little beam in here is what connects one arm to the other side. So I've rotated this around so that I can move that beam in a swinging motion, but later we'll have to put it back. So I'm going to disconnect the the scope, split these arms, and then here is probably the most dangerous part of the whole transformation. This little plastic piece that moves doesn't really fit over the whole way, so that when you get to just about here, I'm actually bending that slightly to get it past. So anyway, I've got it past, so now rotate the whole top around, sandwich this down so that it locks in at the waist. This arm is going to stay on this side, on his left. So what we've got to do is move it up like that. This peg can be quite difficult sometimes, especially when it's brand new, to get in there. It just requires correct positioning. And after the first few times of applying a lot of force to get it in, it will become normal and it won't need too much force anymore. The first time I pegged that in, I was worried I was going to break it off. But I think the key is positioning. If you've got exactly right position, it won't be so hard that it breaks. But you just got to be a bit cautious the first 2 or 3 times you peg that in. Flip out his left hand, turn him around, bend the barrel until it reaches the back, and rotate it up. Again, this is a part that can pop off. It's not permanently attached. It comes off and on so that you don't break it during transformation. Fold this arm up, bend it over, lock it in, it securely locks in. It's got a ratchet. Once it's locked in, the ratchet is in 2 pieces, one on the inside, one on the arm, so it has to lock for the ratchet to work. Lock in the scope again, flip out his right hand, open the head compartment to reveal Megatron's beautiful G1 face, rotate the shins forward, pull out the toes, bend the feet down. The feet are on hinges and ball joints, so you get some nice posability there. Rotate this trigger guard all the way to the up position to get it into the middle of the back. These flaps you're free to do with what you like. I've seen some people put them to the side and have them out that way. I think they are fine behind here. You can arrange them upwards as well. There we have Hegemon, the best looking G1 Megatron so far. This figure's got a lot of good posability. Nobody summons Megatron! I like this, the little hammer thing at the back pokes up in the air, just like in the movie. I always wondered what that was in the 1986 movie when Megatron had a kind of spike off his arm. Well, there you go. If you really think about the transformation, that's what the spike is. It's the back of his gun mode. His feet, as I said, are on balls, so even at wide stances they can sit flat on the ground. Ratchets in both shoulders here. The shoulders aren't really that flexible at the exact point where they pin in an outwards motion, but because of this little flap on the side of each arm, you do get a kind of quasi shoulder raising. Although it does look a bit weird, it still gives you that posability. Although I can imagine that might be at some risk of breaking off. It doesn't seem to be attached very strongly. No double joints on the elbows, but you know, for what this mould achieves, it's a pretty complex transformation. I don't think that it's that much of a big deal. The hands have rotation, and due to the transformation, a bit of in and out at the wrist. No ball joints there. We've got a swivel at the thigh, and again no double joint at the knee, just a ratchet, pretty secure ratchet though. Pin and swivel with a ratchet in the middle of it at the thigh. Good range of motion there. The head rotates, again no ball. Not many balls in this piece, ball joints that is, but still, I mean, if you don't mind that little crack forming, you could raise and lower his head once you separate the door that his head goes into, but it's not really meant to move backwards and forwards when the transformation is complete. The cannon, in his arm cannon, has a lot of posability. Because it's on this extra pin, he can like cradle it in his arms, he can point it straight outwards. See how it's raised up a little bit there so it can make over his shoulder. All in all, very nice. I'm going to get some other figures now to give you some comparisons with other toys that are out at the moment. So here's Megatron's loyal lieutenant Soundwave, music label Soundwave. A little bit small in comparison, but for me this is currently the definitive version of Soundwave, so he belongs with this guy. And of course Megatron, one of the upsides of this Hegemon figure is that Megatron should be a bit bigger than his subordinates, I think, being the powerful leader that he is. So here's the first release of Starscream from Classics. Now this is getting a bit too much. He's just a bit too small, but I don't think that really reflects on Hegemon being too big. I think that the old Starscream mold needs to be retired now. He is just too small, and he's actually small in comparison to a lot of current figures. So that doesn't really look together. I'm waiting for something better to come along for the Starscream. Okay, we'll take him away. Here's Megatron next to, who is this? Dr. Crank. Now that's almost the same size. Constructicons, being as powerful, badass as they are, should be almost as big as Megatron. So I think that they go really well together. And finally, here's Megatron next to Megatron. Almost the same size. I hate this Megatron. I mean, I've got two of them just because I got two of everything that says classics on it, but I don't like this Megatron. I think it's a piece of shit. The face doesn't look like Megatron. The colour doesn't look like Megatron. The gun doesn't look like Megatron. He has these ridiculous wings. It's definitely not one of my favourites. So up until now I've had to make do with whatever Megatron I could get, and being as this was the only classics, it was always a disappointment. But this guy, Hegemon, he has it all. Look at his face. Look at his stance, his chest, his gun, posability, the cannon at the back. I don't know how they got it to look so good. It looks exactly like Megatron looks in the cartoon. So I give a lot of credit to Toyworld. I can't believe that on a first release they could get it this appealing to me. I mean, I think I'm going to have to buy a second one. I'm a bit broke at the moment from so much cool third-party stuff coming out, but definitely Hegemon is on my list for a second version. Let's have a look at some of his accessories in robot mode. The first accessory that we get is this purple mace, or as my son likes to call this kind of thing, a barmy knocker. I think it's from a Roald Dahl book, I'm not sure. But anyway, we get a stainless steel chain and see-through plastic in this. It has a peg, so it can peg into Megatron's hand, just like that. He can swing it around. And we can relive that scene in Transformers More Than Meets the Eye back in G1, where Optimus and Megatron, for like 10 seconds in one episode in the entire series, had energy weapons and beat each other up with them. We always seem to get these energy weapons. Okay, take this off. The second thing we get is this awesome energy sword. I love this energy sword. This is probably the best energy sword I've ever got with a Transformer. It's very jagged energy lines on it, and being that we have all this focus on dark energon now in the Transformers mythos, I think that the colour and shape of this is really appropriate. I wouldn't be surprised if Toyworld had that in mind when they created this. It can separate out into little shards, so you could use this as an energy dagger, or I don't know, maybe just you could pretend it's a piece of energon like what we got in Transformers Prime, how Megatron had dark energon in his chest. I guess you could open up Megatron's head here and stick that inside, and he could, I have the power of dark energon! No, maybe not. Anyway, that too can be mounted in his hand. Well, it's quite big. It still makes a nice sword. Ah! So there we have it. That's about it for Toyworld 01 Hegemon, aka G1 Megatron. Around $100 from eBay or where I got it, Chumung. Other places like BBTS are not going to be selling this because they're scared, basically, of having Hasbro threaten them over some kind of IP or other issues. Buy it. It is totally awesome, and you need to have it. If Megatron is important to you, and he must be if you're watching this video, you need this Megatron, because this is the best Megatron that exists today. Thanks for watching.